Hello, you beautiful degenerates, and welcome to Links and Locks, the Action Network's golf betting podcast presented by Bet365. I'm your host, Roberto Arguello, and I'm very excited to break down the 2024 Memorial Tournament alongside Spencer Aguiar, whom you can find on Twitter at TeeOffSports, and alongside Nick Bretwish, whom you can find on Twitter/X at SticksPicks. Gentlemen, welcome in. It's a big-time signature event at Jack's Place Muirfield Village Golf Club this week before the U.S. Open next week. Awesome fortnight of golf on tap. And without further ado, let's get into our best bets. Spencer, what is your best bet for the Memorial Tournament this week?
I actually have 3 head-to-head wagers this week that you can find throughout the space. I'll talk about them on the show. 2 of them have moved pretty substantially before recording, so I'm not going to give those as my best bet. Instead, I'm going to go with Sungjae Im minus 120 over Jason Day.
All right, Jason Day, historically Spencer's favorite golfer.
Yeah, something's not right here. I don't like it. I don't like the smell of it.
Nick, who's your best bet this week?
I like the play. I'm going to a boy I've been talking about all season long. Everything that I'm looking at grades well. We'll get into it in a minute. But Justin Thomas, top 10, plus 345.
Nice. Going with JT. Could this finally be the week where he gets his first win since the 2022 PGA Championship? We'll find out. For my best bet, I didn't love the betting board outside of the outright card this week, so this is my only bet. I'm splitting a half unit between Austin Eckroat top 10 at 6-1 and top 20 at plus 275, where all ties pay in full. Before we get into that cap and the cap on JT, Spencer, why are you fading your boy Jason Day at Muirfield Village, his home course?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'll give credit to Nick here. I think Nick was more ahead of the curve of what we've seen on Sungjae Im lately. When you look at both of them in my model and you look at the long-term projections, they're going to be relatively equal inside of my sheet if you have access to my model. I think for me, though, more of the optimism or really the fate of Jason Day came from where these metrics are trending for both of these players. I always find the market to overcorrect itself with Day in this spot at Muirfield. Since you said, Roberto, it's his home course. I've never quite understood that factor. He's not only historically been really bad here, but he's also been on record that he rarely plays the course in his free time. It's not like you're necessarily getting a venue that he knows super well, even if it is his home course. We see that front and center when diving into a golfer who's averaged negative 2.85 shots approach at this course in his last 12 appearances. That's highlighted further by a return that has seen him drop strokes 11 of those events, which includes 10 of those appearances where he's lost over 2 shots to the field. The recent approach metrics in 2024 really aren't going to yield anything better than that over his last 7. He's lost 6 of those 7 times, averaged 2.64 shots with the approach since the API in March. I do think it's important to note that Sungjae had demonstrated a lot of that same downturn with the irons. And this is kind of where Nick was ahead of the curve here. He's picked up 1.16 in his last 3 tournaments with the approach. I just thought it felt like one of those situations where some of the long-term data might have this a little bit closer on the surface level. But then you have this massive uptick in upside for Sungjae that's being mixed in with this really low floor for Jason Day, to where I kind of think he's getting a boost for the answer that you talked about, Roberto, of the quote-unquote home course narrative. So I understand it's a weird answer for me to give to fade Jason Day. It's not something you normally hear. You stay for the matchups. You're going to hear a fade of Wyndham Clark also. It's a funky week at Jack's Place this tournament, but I do like the head-to-head card that I have.
I think it's very interesting because Wyndham Clark and Jason Day are statistically somewhat similar players, especially Wyndham Clark over the last year is very similar to 2015 Jason Day when Day was at his peak. So I'm interested on hearing the cap on fading Wyndham Clark as well. Nick, you're backing JT this week. Why do you like him to potentially get a handshake from Jack Nicklaus at the end of this week with a top 10 finish?
Yeah, I also took him outright just to get that out in the ether. But for me, JT grades, let me actually sort by my top players. He grades 5th overall behind Scotty, Xander, Rory, and Victor Hovland. To me, it's everything that we've seen lately with the ball striking. I know the course history is kind of a mixed bag, but he's been a mixed bag. In general, he knows the course very well. He's had some great finishes here. It's all depends on what he does with the flat stick, and I feel like that's kind of been the whole narrative of the season, because in terms of the short game and the wedge play, we'll see those 100-yard and in shots, and everything around the green. He grades inside the top 3 for me with this expected strokes gained off the tee. He grades inside the top 5, and the approach play, which has come back to life, we talked about earlier this season. Like, he is a top player in this field. It's just all about the putter. So again, for a more volatile market in the top 10 and the outright market for JT, I'm okay with that as long as I have an edge on the number. I have JT closer to like plus 280, plus 275 in the top 10 market. So clearly, like, I've been bullish on him all year long, and it's been a little bit of a mixed bag in terms of the finish. But some time off here coming off the PGA, I think this is a really good spot for him, and no one's really talking about it. And we could see that with an inflated price of plus 375. And I'm in on the Sanjay play. I'm with Spencer on that one, but yeah, dude, if JT has a good round putting like he did at like RBC, like, this guy is a walking top 5 right now with the way he's striking the ball.
If you're bullish on somebody as a ball striker on tour overall this season, I think this is a great week to back him, where ball striking will be rewarded. And also, they're relatively flat greens, so I think guys with some spike putting ability can really separate themselves from others. But it's also a week where you can target some guys, at least in some safety markets, who might not be the best putters, because it'll be a little bit easier for them. But getting into my play, I'm betting on a good putter in Austin Eckroat for top 10 and top 20. I don't know that he has the upside to win this week because of his short game, but I like that he is super accurate off the tee, even though he is average generously off the tee in terms of driving distance. I like his approach play, top 40 on tour in both approach play and off the tee, highlighted by his strong play in terms of accuracy. His around the green game, I think, will be mitigated because of some of that lush, thick rough, where he won't be separated from the elite around the green players like a Scotty Scheffler, because there is a lack of short grass around here. So around the green, I think, profiles somewhat similarly to what we saw at Valhalla, which is another Jack Nicklaus design, and Austin Eckroat lost strokes around the green there, but not by a lot. So I think that is a good indicator of how he could do this week. And his putting ability has spike ability. And speaking of the PGA Championship at Valhalla, another course that is super long, but also has relatively small greens, around 5,000 square feet, he was 6th in the field in strokes gained putting, as he gained 6 strokes in total. He was 9th in strokes gained putting, as he gained 6 strokes total on the greens. So I like that Eckroat has the combination of finding fairways, excelling on approach, and being able to putt the ball into the hole for birdies this week. He has only played at Murfield Village one time. That was last year in his tournament debut, and he tied for 30th as he gained strokes in all facets of major strokes gained off the tee, on approach, around the green, and putting. So I like the encouraging course history. He's a young player at 25 years old, first-time winner on the PGA Tour this season. He's going to enter this course with a lot of confidence, and he's coming off of one of the best approach weeks of the season, even though he missed the cut at Colonial. Different type of driving week this week, different type of golf course, not going to be as firm. I like Austin Eckroat's chances of getting up to the first or second page of the leaderboard at the end of this week. Gentlemen, let's hop into our preview for the golf course at Muirfield Village Golf Club. Spencer, I'll sling it to you. What are you weighing most in your model this week?
You guys can tell me if I'm wrong with this assessment here, but it seems like we have all, I'm going to even assume this for you, Roberto, de-emphasize putting a little bit for this venue. Am I correct in that assessment?
Yes.
So one of the things that I saw with my model, you look at Jack here, he's been super protective of this property. He saw Patrick Cantlay win at 19 under, restore the whole property, add new greens, add distance to the mix. You've seen all of that come into play here, but one of the most fascinating shifts in the player performance indicators post-renovation has been this switch in accuracy and GIR percentage. Accuracy has become much more manageable. The rough is going to be very thick, so you still need to find the short grass. And specifically in the last 4 iterations, you see that. But then the field's GIR percentage has dropped significantly. I think that's a really unique combination. It ends up highlighting a few critical factors. One of that is adding emphasis back to the off the tee game, which I don't think this facility had for a while. To me, this turned into, I always called it a pitch and scramble until we got this renovation. And now all of a sudden there is a complete tee to green acumen that is needed here. And then that massive devaluation that I put into putting. So I'm going to look to see how players play tee to green on a course specific outlook for Muirfield. I'm going to look at some of those key proximity buckets. I want to find players that are going to be both accurate and long off the tee. I think that's a very tough combination to beat here. But if you're good at one of those two areas, specifically probably for me with the accuracy, with how lush some of this rough seems to be, I think there's an ability here to just ball strike this course over and over and over again and work yourself up the leaderboard. So good ball strikers that even if their putting might not be what you want. And Nick talked about it on one end with Justin Thomas. I'm going to talk about it in the outright market, which we can't seem between a collective three of us to not have Tony Finau on our card. But add Tony Finau to the card this week for me. It's going to be the golfers like that I'm really going to be highlighting past the obvious favorites that you're going to have in a Scotty Scheffler or Xander Schauffele.
Well, Spencer, without any further ado, would you like to share who's on your outright card and on the rest of your betting card?
Yeah, so it's just two outrights for me this week. It's Tony Finau at 66-1. My model has been extremely hit and miss with how it feels about him. I know that's a wild statement to come on here and say, where it probably does feel like we are all betting him every single week. I would say this is probably more of a nature of one of us has him on the card every single week. And when you listen to a golf show, all of that ends up getting lumped together. But I haven't necessarily wanted outright exposure to Finau since his second place finish in Houston. I think this is a very nice spot for him with his ball striking inside of the top 10 for me from an overall rank perspective. He actually jumped in upside for his win equity. A lot of that stemmed from his third place rank for expected par 5 scoring. I know the putter hasn't been great in 2024, but the recent tee to green production is gaining just under 6 strokes per start over his last 5 tournaments. This feels like one of those opportunities where this price is finally off. And I know we've said this quite frequently, but too high of a number here for the upside that he possesses. And then we go from one golfer that we can talk about that I bet all the time or we bet all the time to a player that I always talk about that I never bet. And that's Colin Morikawa at 16-1. Morikawa graded third for me in expected win equity. That was ahead of the past major championship winner in Xander Schauffele. And then you take the combination of his second place rank for weighted tee to green production for Muirfield. You merge that with his first place return when looking at only Nicholas Trax. Really liked Morikawa here at 16-1. I thought he was the most mispriced player of all the favorites. And then the placement market's going to be a problem. I don't really know how you attack this tournament with it being just over 70 players. Most of the value is going to be gone in that sector for me, unless you go very to the top and try to bet a top 5 or top 10 like you guys talked about with some of your wagers. But I took Kurt Kitayama minus 110 over Mackenzie Hughes. Funny thing with Hughes, where back him some weeks, fade him some weeks, my model continues to be very aggressively correct in a lot of these stances that I've taken on him. I think Kurt Kitayama is an undervalued commodity here because of his 2 missed cuts that he's had. I think the market's overcorrected there. And then I've talked quite frequently about in these tournaments, and I'm going to call this a no-cut tournament. I realize it's top 50 and ties in if you're within 10 shots of the lead, but to me, this is still virtually a no-cut tournament. I think when you have a no-cut tournament where such a vast majority of the players end up making the weekend, you do need a little bit more upside on these matchup bets. It's not a pure fade route like it would normally be. As everybody knows, I'm always trying to find where is my miscut equities going to be found and then fade that golfer in any potential route that I can go in. I was happy to find a golfer that I could take on in Wyndham Clark because my model thought he was one of the more boom or bust candidates. And I guess the boom part of it at least has some of that upside that we're talking about, but it doesn't equal the boom potential that I have for Tony Finau. So I backed Tony Finau at minus 120. We moved that number up into the minus 140s the last I looked. I think it's dropped a little bit over the last, 6 or 7 hours as the number starts to correct itself again. I just think this is a better head-to-head market, even if we don't have a cut this week over anything else.
I like it. I think that we're going to have some commonalities on the outright card. But before we get to my picks, Nick, who you got this week alongside Justin Thomas?
In pod play of Tony Finau, the best I could get live was 65-1, but still, that's too high. I'm with Spencer. There's a lot of upside there, especially if we're negating putting, or if he could just be calm putting like I'm expecting from Justin Thomas to have a value there. Other than that, I rode Morikawa as well. I think in our group chat Monday when Roberto was looking at pricing right when it opened up, we all had value on that number. Justin Thomas at 33 to 1 is currently the best price that I can get there. I have him at 26 to 1, so a decent edge on that. But I do have room, boys, on the card. I wanted to give you a couple names, and I'll keep it quick, but I do have room for about 0.33 to 0.35 at risk in the outright market. Here are some of the guys that I did find value on. I just can't decide on who I'm going to punch a ticket on. Russell Henley, I feel like I'm 0 for my life on betting him in the outright market. I feel like for me, it's like more of a cash game staple in DFS, and that's what I'll get with Russ. I found a little bit of value in Jordan Spieth. I hate the ball striking right now. I don't know if you guys see anything that makes you think, like, other than what he's been doing with the driver, which has gotten a lot better, maybe there's upside there in a inflated number on a guy with his talent. Alex Noren, I'm never going to bet to win, so don't comment on him. Sepp Straka, I have value on him. Siwoo Kim, same story as Russ. Keegan Bradley again. I think that, he was my one and done pick at the Charles Schwab there at Colonial, and I feel like I'm interested in going back there. Tony Finau, we already talked about. The last guy that I will give you that I actually think has some upside. I mean, Cameron Young, I don't know if I want to do that again, but I'm leaning Keegan Bradley or Russell Henley. I don't think I could fit both of them on the card, or Jordan Spieth. Just because Jordan Spieth, like, okay, win or bust, I don't care.
I guess my biggest problem with Henley, because my model liked him also, and I had some value there. I do tend to believe he's probably a better safety market sort of a play. So, like you talked about, cash games, head-to-head, things of those natures. I liked Keegan Bradley. I didn't end up punching the ticket, but he was inside of a top 15 win equity candidate for a golfer that was, I don't know what you said the best price currently is in the market, Nick. I saw him get up to 70 to 1 at one point.
Keegan's, yes, 70 to 1 right now. I have multiple books throughout the space. And then Jordan Spieth at 55 to 1. I may be able to fit them both. Like, Jordan Spieth is not missing fairways. He's hitting the ball long. Like, if anything, his off the tee game is as good as it's ever been going into a tournament where we all think that is a very high demand. Obviously, the iron play is just broken, but if he finds anything, it's just like 55 to 1 for Jordan Spieth is a perfect outright ticket.
It's boom or bust. I don't necessarily hate it. He's been great here historically also. So for all the players that are getting a boost because of course history, he's definitely not one of those options here.
Yeah. If you want to take on...
Okay. People are still interested in Cantlay, and his ball striking has been just as bad as Jordan Spieth's.
Yeah. If you want to bet Spieth, I would definitely do it in the outright market because he's going to figure it out eventually, and he is driving the ball more accurately than he has off the tee, basically in his entire career since his
and long,
and he's longer than ever too. So that gives him upside, and it's just the approach play is basically the worst it's ever been in his career. So
that is a fact. I think I got room for him.
2019 was a little bit worse according to Data Golf, but he's going to figure it out at some point. I'm not sure quite when. Maybe take a stab next week at 100 to 1 odds at Pinehurst. I think that might be a little bit more appealing than 55 to 1 for me this week. But I'm intrigued by a lot of those guys. I like Sepp Straka a lot as a guy who's going to find fairways. The thing is, you got a mix of guys who have lower upside, but who have a higher floor in there, and then some guys with upside like Spieth and Cameron Young, but you don't know if they're going to finish dead last in the tournament.
And my concern here too is like the market is undecided on Spieth. Like, he's a decent sized dog or a decent sized favorite to Sanjay, a dog to Thigala, but favored to Max Homa. So it's like that no one knows what to expect from Jordan Spieth, and I think there's a ton of upside there. I think I may do it.
Spencer, I feel like being a favorite against Sungjae is pretty noticeable with. I mean, it's easy for me to say that Sungjae has sharp movement because I have a wager on him, and that's not exactly the route I'm trying to go here with what I'm saying, but Sungjae has sharp movement at the end of the day. So if you're a favorite over Sungjae, I think that's a step in the right direction.
Spencer, I know that you're dealing with a time crunch today, but are there any plays that you wanted to workshop or anything that just missed your card that you were intrigued by that might be worth noting?
2 seconds, guys. Sorry to cut you off. 63 to 1 is the best price I can get on Jordan Spieth. Just tell me to do it, and we'll do it. If we're betting Finau at 65, I'm doing it. Muting. Thank you. And pipe play.
No, there's nothing else for me. I mean, the only discussion I do want to have, because I just wanted to bring it up, this one and done contest, unfortunately, I'm throwing up the white flag. I talked on the show, like Nick was correct. Fleetwood was the best play. I knowingly had the same answer there. I looked at what the score totals were and the money that we had, and I realized I was a little bit closer than I thought I was. Like, I'm not out of the running here, so I got aggressive. I decided to take Theegala. Funny enough, every other contest I was in, I took Tom Kim, which would have been more of the correct decision. I have not one time made the right decision in this contest, and now I've lost my lead for the most cuts that have been made. Things have gone south. I have no players left for this week either. I would have liked, if I was front running, to play Morikawa here. Great spot for him. I really only have, I don't have any of the top 10 players, and the one option that I have that would be one of the elite guys is Wyndham Clark, and I've already talked about my disdain for Clark on this board. So I think sometimes in one and done contests, when you just don't have the right pieces that get put together, unfortunately you run into this. And I almost feel like now, based off of all those answers, and I can't promise I'm going to do it because I've never really actually given the pick that I've said on the show, which has been a detriment to my success, but I'm probably going to go with Tommy Fleetwood because now I feel like I at least have the ability to where my model's neutral on him. He's very similar to where Russell Henley would grade for me in my sheet, but I feel like if I didn't play Fleetwood last week, maybe this is a sign that this is the week that I can use him, and I really have nothing to lose. So with a lack of players, I'll go with Tommy Fleetwood for that section, just so we have something on record here.
Do you guys know the last time Tommy Fleetwood played at Muirfield Village Golf Club?
I do not.
2017. He has not played here. I'm not sure quite what to read into that. Perhaps it's been part of the season where he has skipped it to go across the pond before the Scottish Open and the Open Championship. Maybe he just skipped it on the schedule because of whatever reason. He's played the Canadian Open frequently, I believe. I was intrigued by that. I'm not sure what to make of it.
I don't love that answer, and I'll get out of here after this, but Fleetwood, you would think this is a nice course fit for him. I don't love that there is some reason why he hasn't been here, and that might be a question to specifically ask him, but all the off the tee numbers you're going to love about it. Some of the short game stuff looks great. So, he's a borderline top 15 player, no matter how I shook it. And on a board where I don't have very many of those options left, I do think Fleetwood can be a little contrarian and still possesses a pretty nice floor here.
Definitely agree. I'm surprised that he's missed the cut in both of his starts here, but no matter what course in the world you play, Tommy Fleetwood's going to profile well because he doesn't have any weaknesses.
Yeah.
Besides winning. In America, at least.
All right. Well, thank you, Spencer. Appreciate you stopping by. We'll finish out the show pretty quickly. I'll get into my outright card, and then, Nick, we can hop into our one and done plays after that. So
yeah, let's do it.
For my outright card, I'm also on Morikawa. A couple other things to note that haven't been discussed yet. His form at this tournament has been awesome, and you might not see that just by looking at some of his results. Last year, he was in the mix before he was sick in the final round and withdrew. So that withdrawal probably was a top 10, very likely a top 5 last year. Who knows? He could have won if he went low in the final round. Lost in 2021 in a playoff to Patrick Cantlay. It says he's second place. I'm going to give him third place because in my mind, John Rahm still won that tournament. He had to withdraw entering the final round with a 6-shot lead. So I'm going to give that one to Rahm.
Yep.
Was lapping the field. But hey, I can't complain. I was able to bet everybody in contention at plus 10 plus to 1 that day. So it was still a great win when both the guys in the playoff you have great odds on. Anyways, he's won both those events. He's had high finishes in theory in both those events, with one of them actually being a high finish. And then, while it wasn't the Memorial Tournament, back in 2020 when golf restarted after the COVID-19 pandemic, he won here when they played the Workday Charity Open here. So he's got a win, he's got a playoff loss, which I'm calling a third place, and he's got another top 5 from last year that is a withdrawal. So love the combination of Morikawa's elite accuracy off the tee, elite long iron play normally, and then he's actually putted relatively well here 3 out of 5 times. So
that's what I was going to say. His stroke seam putting is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And so not only that, but he's also putting the ball the best of his career right now on the PGA Tour. His around the green play is also the best of his career right now. His off the tee game quietly is the best it's ever been. He's more accurate than he's ever been this season, at just over 11% above driving accuracy average on a weekly basis. And his approach play is the worst that it's been on the PGA Tour, but he's trending in the right direction with having gained at least 0.9 strokes per round in each of the last two tournaments, which both resulted in top 5 finishes. One of those, by the way, was at another Nicklaus design in Valhalla at the PGA Championship. So for all these reasons, I love Colin Morikawa this week. We're all on Colin, so let's go Colin. He's going to be my one and done play. I decided not to use him for, I believe it was the RBC Heritage a couple weeks ago, because I wanted to save him for this spot. So I'm keeping him for this week, or maybe it was a Charles Schwab Challenge. I didn't want to use him because I wanted to keep him potentially for this week.
Yeah, he was popular that week.
Yeah. So I just wanted to save him for a bigger purse. So here we are. I've kept Hovland, Cantlay, Morikawa potentially for this week, and I think I'm going to lock in Colin Morikawa for one and done. So I've got him on my outright card. I went aggressive with my outright card because I've got him at the top. I've also got another play on Ludwig Oberg, whom you can find out there at multiple books at 25-1. One thing I didn't realize until today is that if you look at the top 27 on the PGA Tour in both driving distance and driving accuracy, there's only one golfer who's among the top 27 in both. That is Ludwig Oberg. We've talked on the show about how he could potentially be a generational driver of the golf ball because of that combination of driving accuracy and driving distance that is not really replicated right now. There are guys who can do it on a weekly basis where they're both accurate and long, but no one so far this season has done it as consistently as he has. So I like his chances this week at 25-1, buying the dip on him after the rumors of the knee injury. That was why he withdrew from the Wells Fargo Championship, also missed the cut at the PGA Championship. But I'm buying the dip. I know that he is a huge talent in this field, and I love his chances at 25-1. Also, on approach, he's above average for basically all proximity ranges, and he can also get hot with his putter. Around the green is his weakness right now, but like we mentioned with the thick rough, I think that will neutralize some of the worst players around the green. So I like his chances there, and I love his chances of winning at some point in his career at Muirfield Village. So 25-1, I don't know that we're ever going to see this number again. So I like Ludwig Oberg. And then my final play in the outright market is on Corey Connors at 55-1. This is my Tony Finau in memoriam bet because I'm not betting Finau. I got to bet on somebody else who might not be able to putt at all this week. But there is some optimism for Corey Connors because he showed signs of life with the putter last week when he was 7th in the field in strokes gained putting. He gained over 1.7 shots per round on the greens last week in his homeland of Canada. So hopefully Corey Connors can keep it going because there's a lot of red when you look at his data golf profile for 2024 in putting specifically. But if we can just get an average, maybe above average week on the greens from Corey Connors, everything else is there for him to contend. He's second on tour this year in strokes gained approach behind you know who, and he's basically above average from every single approach bucket. And this year, or in this course, Muirfield Village tests pretty much every club in your bag. So I love that for Corey Connors, and he's also very strong off the tee. He's not as long as he was relatively last year, I believe, but he's 29th in driving accuracy, 29th overall in strokes gained off the tee. He's got that combination of being long, finding fairways, elite approach play, and then if he can putt the ball, he can win this week. So I liked him at 55-1. I thought he had as much upside as basically anybody else in that 50-ish to 1 range. So I am on Connors, Oberg, and Morikawa in the outright market this week. I've just noted my one and done play. It's going to be Colin Morikawa. I've locked it in, not really considering anybody else. Nick, you are within shouting distance in one and done. Who are you playing this week?
It's Morikawa. I don't know. It's like I don't know what the guys like. I'm okay if I just kind of drift off you a little bit here. If I can just get back to second place, I still got plenty of guys left in the tank. I just real quick, what happened to Morikawa's short game? Who did he see? Was it Joe? What was the last name? The guy that fixed Hovland, Joe Mayo, right?
I'm not as locked in on the coaching changes. I know that he's gone back to a familiar coach. Maybe it's
like whatever happened to Hovland, and it was Joe Mayo that worked with Hovland. Whatever is going on with Morikawa, this dude is one of the best short game players on the PGA Tour when that was his weakness. So, yeah, I think he's just damn near a lock for me in almost any format, especially in the DFS world. And I'm pretty sure he's going to be very popular. But my other options this week are Victor Hovland. I don't mind it, but I'd prefer his short game be in a really good spot like it was going into last year at this tournament. And this is kind of where he started to click everything and went on a tear. Patrick Cantlay, I don't think really has a ton of form that I'd like to waste a guy like that on. I'd rather, okay, he'd be like a late summer pick if he does get his form back in one of these elevated events. Max Homa, I feel like is a good contrarian pick. I know the market doesn't love him. He graded quite well for me. Obviously, just one bad tournament at the Colonial. Other than that, he's lighting it up. His short game's been good. Not nearly as accurate as we want off the tee, but his iron play is fantastic. So I like Max Homa as a contrarian in me. Hideki Matsuyama grades great for me, but dude, I don't know if I ever get him right. I feel like when I do play him, he withdraws. And then I think the last time I played him was here, and he put the marker on his driver and got kicked out or whatever.
That's right.
That was at Muirfield. Well, yeah, it was like I think he was contrarian
right.
in the DFS world, and I had a lot of them, and that hurt. Other than that, like Russell Henley, like where I'm at, and like I'm trying to win, I'm trying to catch up to you. Russell Henley just doesn't check that box for the upside. Substrack, I'm concerned about him as well. I like Akshay a ton here, like if you're in a really, really deep league. But other than that, I just don't see how you avoid Morikawa if you have him open.
I like the Homa play. He's one of the few people that just missed my card in the outright market. I think he's a great contrarian play if you want to play him for DFS. Tons of upside, 2 consecutive top 6 finishes here. Ugly showing in his last start at Colonial, but I think the way to bet him is for upside.
Yep, I'm with you.
Also, wanted to note, I was thinking about Ricky Fowler going back to Butch Harmon. Dude, Colin Morikawa has gone back to his coach, Rick Sessinghouse. He worked with Mark Blackburn for a little while, and now he's back with Sessinghouse, and that has helped him find his feels from before, and he's obviously playing a lot better because of it. So a lot of reasons to back Colin Morikawa this week. We noted playing as well as he has.
I don't know one thing wrong I could possibly say about him.
Yeah.
Not one thing.
I think this lines up really well for him this week. All the stars are starting to align. Wanted to give a quick reminder, however, that this podcast is presented by Bet365. Bet365 doesn't do ordinary. That's why you get more boosts with them than with anyone else. Every day they power up the odds on hundreds of bets to give you a chance to win more. Bet365 boosts specific markets, your winnings, and even parlays, and they don't stop there. Keep an eye out for their biggest and best odds with the incredible Super Boosts. Check out the boosts and see why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and present in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, North Carolina, New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia, or 18 and older in Kentucky. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. All right, Nick. Have you made any bets for the U.S. Open? Anybody that you're looking out for next week for Monday morning when odds drop? I don't know if you've had any chance to take a peek at that, or if you're among those of us who think Scheffler's going to win by 10 strokes.
Yeah, I like Scotty and I like Colin Morikawa. So I agree. I don't know. I mean, I'm always looking for someone at least like in that 25 to 35 to 1 range that where the books don't get any liability at all. And I think this course is just it's so quirky with no rough. What is it all just like native? I don't know. It seems like something that's got it. Yeah, Scotty. You need some distance. You need accuracy. You need the short game. Like it's meant for Scotty. And I think that as much as like elite iron players can kind of separate themselves and make a run towards the weekend, Morikawa, the way he's playing is kind of like my option B. Other than that, like I loved Cantlay going into the season for something like this, and if when he started a little slow and we got 25 to 1, I was interested. But again, I just have such form concerns. I would have rather taken like a 28 to 32 to 1 on Cantlay and hope that he found his form. And right now, it's just not happening.
Yeah, I wanted to get into detail on Cantlay in just a moment, but looking at his driving accuracy in particular from last year to this year, it has fallen off a cliff. Last year, he was 26th in driving accuracy on the PGA Tour. This year, he's 69th. And this year on approach, he's 122nd. Last year, he was 16th. So those two specific ball striking categories are why I'm out on him this week. I really need to see that he can hit a lot more fairways, and the approach play needs to be more consistent. Although I am more optimistic about his approach play. It's just that he used to be an elite total driver, and now he doesn't have that fastball. And he's never been the best player on approach, but he's been really solid. So need to see him get the driver back together. And like you, I'm holding out on him. Perhaps he's somebody I could play at Castle Pines later in the summer for what is the last week of one and done.
Yeah, no doubt.
Nick, anybody else that just missed your card that you're looking at, or where else can we find it this week?
I'm considering moving on Keegan Bradley inside the top 20. I like the pricing there. It's a minimal edge, but I do think that I love the data I'm seeing from him. I love his swing when I actually watch it recently. Like, I feel like he's a guy that's coming into form. No one's talking about it. Seems to always play well in the Midwest. So I do like him. Finau, I think, as much as I wanted to take like a top 10, the outright ticket's probably going to be enough for me just because my units lost Finau is not good. My accountant probably wants to slap me in the face just for continuing to invest in this guy. Lucas Glover kind of checked a couple boxes for me. Do you think he's got some upside? I feel like I wish, again, we've talked about it off air. We're kind of sick of the no-cut events. I'd rather give me like a field of 85, cut it to 50, something like that. But getting rid of the top 40 market, like I guess it's been good for me in the majors, like with Jordan Smith at Valhalla, like those kind of tickets that I kind of have to go searching for. I seem to do very well at, and Ryan Fox last week inside the top 20.
Mm-hmm. But plus 350 there, right?
Yeah, that was a great ticket. That helped me break even on the week, and then I did take that goofy parlay Sunday morning with Tom Kim moving up. But like for me, live betting, I'm mostly looking for guys that are like in their baseline of ball striking, if not better, for the week, and then guys that just aren't really making a lot of putts that are historically good putters. And Tom Kim kind of checks that box, and I loved that he was paired with Rory. Because, like, yeah, Rory's going to get most of the attention. You kind of draft off him, and both those guys, they shoot 64 on Sunday. Like, you got to love that.
Yeah.
But, yes, it's like Glover for me. Like, I know we don't care a ton about putting this week. He's going to hit fairways. His iron proximities should be fantastic. They've been all year, all his career pretty much. But I don't know. I just feel like he's a top 40 guy, and that market doesn't exist this week. And so, I don't know. I'm going to go with Justin Thomas top 10 in the placement, and maybe find something live, but other than Keegan Bradley, I'll probably get there. Siwoo Kim seems to be priced down a little too much. What are your thoughts about Seamus Power? He graded out insanely well for me.
Well, Siwoo Kim, I have the same thoughts as always. Love Siwoo Kim. This should be a great course for him if he can putt. I have less confidence in him putting than basically anybody else on tour. So I'm out for now, but if he's striping the ball, I could get involved with him in some way, perhaps a matchup. I think that would be my preferred route for him, just because I don't trust his upside, but I trust the floor. Seamus Power, relatively streaky player. His approach numbers look a lot better recently. The putter is a weakness. What's that?
He's not going to miss a fairway. I know he sucked at Canadian Open, which is why I kind of like maybe this is more the DFS mindset type of play for me because no one's going to go back there. But I don't know if my data pulls are off, but I really like Seamus.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to like in this profile, specifically with his approach play. His putter does have spike ability. I just feel like he's not that long, and he's not elitely accurate as much as some other players like a Lucas Glover or a Siwoo Kim or a Sepp Straka. So I think that somewhat limits his upside. Only 2 starts here in his career. So I'm intrigued by Power, but I don't think I'm going to play him. I think that he's somebody who, if this was a full field event, the top 40 market might be the way to go. Yeah. But I just don't think we get the number that we need. So that's a bummer.
Yeah, the best price I can get in that market is plus 450, which isn't bad, but nah, I want like 475. 5-1 seems right for a guy like Seamus Power, who's just an absolute mixed bag of form. That's all I got, though.
Only 2 top 20s for him so far this season, but they both come in his last 4 starts, including one at the Wells Fargo Championship and at the RBC Heritage. So 2 for 2 in his last 2 signature events in top 20 finishes. So very optimistic about James Power then. I think he's definitely somebody to watch out for, and maybe in the coming weeks at like John Deere, Rocket Mortgage, he could be somebody who could get a long shot on to win.
I'm with it.
Nick, where can we find your work this week?
Yeah, at Action Network, the Best Bets article, I will have that up. It's going to be very focused on Justin Thomas. I'm gonna ride with that one. Better Golf Pod on Twitter. That is BETTOR Golf Pod. And we'll probably do another underdog draft. Our winner last week got an extra $100. So if you haven't signed up on Underdog, just go to one of our Twitters. I don't need to pump that advertisement on here, but we always throw in like an extra $50 to $100 on Underdog to our winner. So we'll continue to do that each week, especially when it's these elevated events to where my personal risk is certainly lowered because of my history with these no-cut events. So that's pretty much it, though.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have a full field like last week where Spencer and I cashed in on Chandler Phillips. You had some Ryan Fox as well. So big time week for us in the placement market. Hopefully, we'll have some juicy numbers next week with a full field, obviously, at the U.S. Open at Pinehurst. That'll be an awesome tournament. Different track from this one this week, with there being no rough compared to a ton of lush rough at Muirfield Village. But that'll be awesome. We got a bunch of great content on Action Network, whether you're following NBA Finals, WNBA, MLB, whatever it might be. We got you covered on the Action Network. So check us out online, on the app, on YouTube, on podcast forum, wherever you get your podcasts. We've got you covered. So be sure to tune in. Tons of great content from the Action Network team covering any sport you could possibly want. Also, shout out to baseball, college baseball, World Series coming up. Super Regionals next weekend should be a fun one. I know Colin Wilson's got all of his projections for everything and any possible pitching matchup. So be sure to check that out. I'll be locked in on that as well. You can find Nick on Twitter or X at SticksPicks. That's Sticks with an X. You can find Spencer on Twitter /X at TOffSports, and you can find me there at Roberto A213. Thanks again to everyone who makes this podcast possible, especially our producers Noah Niederhofer, David Payne, and Matt Mitchell. And of course, biggest thanks to you, the listeners, for tuning in every single week. Thanks again for tuning in to this week's Memorial Tournament betting preview, and we'll catch you guys next week in North Carolina at Pinehurst.